Chapter 1. Locked in Silk. Marissa Lane didn't set out to become a stripper. It wasn't some teenage rebellion or a thrill-seeking dare turned permanent. It was survival, cold, necessary, and cruel in the way only real life could be. She was 16 the first time the bills stopped getting paid. Her mom had already been gone a year by then, overdosed in a motel bathtub that no one bothered to claim except the coroner and a caseworker. Her dad had tried to hold it together after that, really. But grief was a drug too, and it didn't take long for it to start looking a lot like the others. The lights stayed on for a while, the fridge had food, rent was late but manageable, and then it wasn't. Then came the whispers. "I can't keep doing this, Riss. You're old enough to help now." "Just until I get back on my feet." She tried babysitting, worked a few shifts at the gas station until they found out she was underage, tried tutoring, but that didn't stretch far when you were missing school half the time to drag your dad out of bars or ERS, and that's when she met Tony. Tony worked makeup counters during the day and moved through shadows at night, confidence and eyeliner sharp enough to kill. They met by chance, if you believe in that sort of thing. Marissa had shown up to a back-alley music show wearing beat-up Converse and eyes that hadn't cried in a month, and Tony had seen something in her. "You've got that look," Tony had said, "the kind that could make good men ruin themselves." Tony introduced her to the world behind the curtain, told her about the Velvet Room, an underground club run by people who didn't ask for birth certificates if you were beautiful, quiet, and willing to wear a mask. At first, Marissa said no. Then the heat got cut off. Then she came home to a notice on the door and her dad passed out in a pile of unopened bills. She was 17 when she walked into that club for the first time. They gave her the name Velvet. They gave her a mask. And they told her the rules. No touching. No full nudity. No real names. But everything else? That was hers to own. To define. She designed her own costume. Sleek black, nothing trashy. Built mystique. She bought a collar and attached a key to it, not because anyone had the lock, but because it made people wonder. The key became her weapon, her boundary, her lie. She added the chastity belt after the third time a client offered her double for just a little more. It wasn't just protection, it was a statement. She wasn't for sale. She wasn't there to be touched. She was there to take control. And she did. She learned fast. How to read body language, how to slow her movements just enough to keep eyes locked and wallets open. She practiced a southern accent, soft and sweet, to throw them off. Everyone underestimated a southern girl. No one expects her to be the one who writes down every name, every request, every secret whispered in the dark. Now, at 18, she pays the rent. She keeps her father's medication filled. She shows up to school with bags under her eyes, and no one suspects a thing. Just another quiet girl with bad attendance and worse luck. They don't know that by night she is Velvet, queen of the private room, priestess of the teas, untouched and untouchable. And she wouldn't trade it for anything. Because for the first time in her life, she holds the power. Chapter 2. The First Descent. The dressing room smelled like sweat, perfume, and fear. Not the kind of fear that made you run. The kind that made you freeze. The kind that clung to your lungs like smoke and settled in your spine, just under the glitter. Marissa sat on the padded stool in front of the mirror, barely breathing. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the mask, crimson silk, soft and sharp like a secret. It covered her eyes and half her cheeks, held in place by two fine straps behind her ears. Her makeup was too perfect, thanks to Tony, who stood nearby applying lipstick like it was war paint. "Breathe, sugar," Tony said without looking up. "They smell nerves faster than booze." Marissa nodded, swallowing hard. Her throat was dry. Her body hummed with something between adrenaline and electricity. She wasn't Velvet yet, not until she stepped past that curtain. She looked down at herself in the mirror. The black corset hugged her tightly, cinched just enough to feel the boundary of her breath. Her legs, long and bare, gleamed with shimmer under the soft vanity light. The leather collar at her neck pressed lightly against her skin, the silver key swinging just above her sternum. Beneath it all, beneath the shimmer and silk and mask, was the thing that made her different. The chastity belt had been her idea. Tony had raised an eyebrow but said nothing. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. It just needed to be there to remind her that even if she bared skin, she chose the rules. "You got this, girl," Tony said finally, standing behind her. "You're not Marissa Lane out there. You're whoever the hell you decide to be." "Velvet," she whispered. The name still felt foreign, but it had weight. The floor beneath her heels vibrated faintly. The muffled pulse of bass music came through the walls. Cheers, laughter, a low, rising heat of anticipation. Tony walked her to the side curtain. Beyond it, red lights glowed like embers. The small circular stage, just a few feet across, waited for her like a spotlighted confession booth. No touching. Stay in control. Let 'em think they've seen something rare. "That's how you get remembered," Tony murmured. "Not by taking it off, by keeping it locked up." She stepped forward. The lights hit her first, warm, red, too bright after the dressing room. Then came the heat, the sound, the eyes. She could feel them instantly, pressing in from the dark, dragging across her skin. Her chest tightened. "Move," she told herself, but her legs wouldn't respond. "Breathe." Then the music changed, a slow rhythm, heavy bass, velvet drums. She took one step, then another. And just like that, the fear didn't matter, because they didn't know her. Not one person in that room knew her name, or what her voice sounded like, or how many nights she had cried herself to sleep, wishing her mother was still alive. All they saw was Velvet. She grabbed the pole, hand light, not clinging. She twisted slowly, letting her hair fall over one shoulder, tilting her head just enough to give them green eyes under red silk. Her body moved, clumsy at first, then smoother. She remembered the routines she'd practiced in the mirror with the volume low. She remembered to slow down, to look at them, but not see them. Gasps, whispers, bills folded and placed along the edge. Someone in the crowd said her name, but not her real one. "Velvet," they breathed. And it was real. She didn't feel like Marissa Lane anymore. Not the broke girl, not the daughter of a ghost and an addict, not the invisible student who skipped lunch to avoid talking to anyone. On that stage, she was everything she wanted to be. Power, mystery, a locked door no one had the key for, except her. When the music stopped, she held still for 3 beats longer than necessary, then turned her back, walking away slowly. The applause followed her like a tide. Backstage was dim and quiet, too quiet after the rush of noise she'd just left behind. The curtain fell behind her like a closing vault door, muffling the music, the cheers, the blur of staring faces. Marissa stood still for a moment, heart pounding in her chest, like it was trying to crawl back to the surface. Her skin buzzed. Her hands were clammy. The mask stayed on. "Velvet's not done yet," she told herself. "Damn girl." Tony was leaning against the vanity with a cigarette in hand, smirking like she'd known this would happen all along. "You walk out there looking like a baby deer," she said, "and come back with a whole damn forest in your eyes." Marissa didn't respond. She walked to the mirror, trying not to shake as she reached behind her head and undid the mask. Her reflection blinked back at her, still flushed, still glistening, but something in her eyes had changed. Not fear. Focus. On the vanity sat a small velvet pouch with a gold string. One of the bouncers must have gathered the bills during her set. She picked it up, curious, untying the cord and letting the contents spill out into her lap. Cash, 50s, 20s, a few crumpled singles, all of it real. She counted quickly, fingers numb, $326. For 10 minutes of silence and control. For nothing more than being something they couldn't touch. Her throat tightened. She didn't cry. She didn't smile either. She just stared at the money. That's the water bill, she thought. And the overdue electric. And enough left over for groceries that don't come in cans. She set the money down gently, like it might burn through the table. "How you feeling?" Tony asked, voice softer now. Marissa looked at her, like I just robbed the whole room without lifting a finger. Tony's smirk turned into a real smile. "Good. That means you get it." Marissa nodded slowly, then reached up and touched the silver key on her collar, letting it swing gently between her fingers. "Velvet gets it," she said. "Marissa's still figuring it out." Tony laughed, low and knowing. "Trust me, sugar. Once Velvet starts earning, Marissa's going to get real comfortable letting her take the lead." Marissa didn't answer right away. She looked down at the pile of cash again, then at her mask, still warm in her hand. She thought about the eviction notice on the kitchen counter, about her dad passed out on the couch again, about every whispered apology and empty promise she'd ever heard in that house. And then she thought about the man in the front row, how he'd stared at her like she was a goddess, a riddle wrapped in silk. She picked up the mask again, this time not as armor, but as a crown. "Yeah," she whispered. "She just might." Chapter 3. Hallways and Hollow Eyes. The school bell sounded more like a warning than a welcome. Marissa Lane shuffled through the entrance of Sherman High with her hood up and earbuds in, drowning in a playlist she didn't even remember cueing. Her backpack hung low on one shoulder, worn at the seams and patched where the strap had nearly given out last semester. She hadn't slept. Not really. A 3-hour nap on the couch, fully dressed, her collar still around her neck until she'd bolted upright and torn it off like it was burning her skin. The key had fallen between the cushions. She'd found it by feel, her hand trembling as if it were afraid to let go. Now, under the fluorescent lights of the school hallway, everything felt off, like she was moving too slow for a world that didn't know who she was anymore. Because Velvet had walked through fire last night, and Marissa had to pretend nothing burned. She reached her locker and spun the dial, fingers sluggish. It took her 3 tries. Inside, a textbook slipped loose and slammed onto the floor. She knelt to pick it up just as someone brushed past her without a word. Invisible again. She stood, fixed her hoodie, and glanced in the small mirror taped inside the locker door. Same face, green eyes tired and hollow, lips bare, no shimmer, no mask. She touched her collarbone without thinking, half expecting to feel the leather choker and key still there. It wasn't. Just skin. "Hey, you alive?" The voice startled her. She turned to see Jessie Morales, her lab partner in chemistry, leaning against the locker beside hers with an arched eyebrow and a breakfast burrito half unwrapped in one hand. "You look like you lost a fight with a bus," Jessie said around a bite. Marissa blinked. "Didn't sleep." "No kidding. What, were you gaming all night or something?" "Something," she said. Jessie snorted. "Well, your mystery life better not get me a C in chem, Lane." Marissa gave a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'll keep the world-ending chaos to a minimum until lab's over." Jessie grinned and sauntered off, burrito in hand. Marissa stood there for another second before shutting her locker. The click echoed louder than it should have. As she walked toward first period, she passed a group of girls reapplying lip gloss at the water fountain. One of them looked up, whispered something and laughed. Not at her, just near her. But it still cut. If they only knew. If they knew where she was last night. What she wore. What she earned. She passed a boy. Dan. No, David. Someone she barely recognized, who looked at her for a second too long before quickly looking away. Her steps slowed. Had he been there? Had he been in the crowd? Her stomach twisted, but she kept moving. Head down, hands in pockets. The hallway buzzed with noise she couldn't care about. In the classroom, she slid into her desk before the bell and stared out the window. Out there, she was powerful, worshipped, in control. In here, she was just Marissa Lane again. The girl no one ever saw. Chapter 4, The Price of Power. A month in, and Velvet was no longer just a whisper. She had regulars now, men who booked their seats early, who didn't blink at tossing 50s onto the stage just to watch her twirl once. She had competitors too. Some of the other girls whispered behind her back now, half with envy, half with caution. Velvet didn't drink. She didn't party after hours. She didn't touch or let herself be touched. And yet, she was raking in tips like she ran the place. Because when Velvet danced, it wasn't lust they saw. It was longing, and longing paid better. The club manager, Derek, had noticed. She got called to his office after a Thursday set, a sultry red light routine that earned her enough for next week's groceries and a new pair of boots. She was still in costume, hair damp with sweat, corset loosened but still hugging her ribs. The key on her collar tapped gently against her chest as she walked the hallway back to the staff office. Derek's door was cracked. He didn't look up when she knocked. "Come in, Velvet." His voice was smooth, practiced. He was in his 40s, always in a too-tight dress shirt, and reeked of cologne that tried too hard to cover the scent of power. She stepped in but didn't sit. "Something wrong?" she asked. "Depends," Derek said, leaning back in his chair. "You've had a good run. You're becoming valuable." "I'm glad you noticed." "I did." He laced his fingers, gaze sharp now. "Which is why I want to talk about your cut." Her brows rose, she said nothing. "You're at 60-40, he continued. "Standard for new girls. But you're not new anymore. You've proven yourself. Crowd loves you. High rollers keep asking about you." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "So I'm offering you a better split." 50-50. Velvet tilted her head. That's what she wanted, right? More of what she earned. More control. But she didn't trust easy gifts, especially not from men like Derek. "What's the catch?" He gave a mock-offended shrug. "Why do you assume there's a catch?" She didn't answer, just stared. "Private dances," he said finally. "Start taking them." "That's it." Her spine stiffened. "That's it?" "That's it. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, of course. Just close the curtain. Give them the time they're paying for." Velvet's jaw tightened. She'd earned this. Every damn dollar. She didn't take her top off, didn't do backroom favors. And she still brought in more than most. And now they wanted to buy the illusion of access. "You know I don't do privates," she said quietly. "Then you stay at 60-40, Derek replied, already glancing at his phone. "I've earned better." "Then give better." There it was. The truth behind the offer. He didn't care how good she danced. He wanted her behind a curtain away from the bouncers, in the shadows with men who would pay to try their luck. She could say no all she wanted, but he would be the one setting the expectations now. Her fingers brushed the silver key on her collar. Velvet smiled slowly. "I'll think about it." "Don't take too long," Derek said. "This place moves fast." So do favourites. She walked out without looking back. Back in the dressing room, she sat in front of the mirror, her reflection unreadable. She still had glitter on her collarbone, sweat in her hair, bills in her pouch. But it didn't feel like a win tonight. Not when her mask was starting to feel more like a leash. Chapter 5. Negotiation. The next night, she didn't wait to be called in. Velvet, fully dressed in her usual slow-burn elegance, mask in hand and silver key swinging lightly against her chest, walked down the narrow hall with the same calm she carried on stage. Her heels echoed off the concrete floor like a countdown. She didn't knock this time. Derek looked up from his desk, phone in hand, a half-empty drink sweating on a coaster beside him. He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't think I'd hear from you so fast." "You didn't," Velvet replied, stepping inside. "I'm not here to ask. I'm here to make you an offer." That got his attention. He leaned back, curious. "All right, mystery girl. Let's hear it." She closed the door behind her, slowly, deliberately, and remained standing. "I'll take private rooms," she said, "but only on my terms." Derek smirked. "Oh, you have terms? 55 to me, 45 to the house?" His smile faded. "Bold." "Accurate," she said. "Check the receipts. I bring in more from the stage than any girl here, and I haven't even started touching your backroom menu yet. You want me behind that curtain? It costs." He tapped his glass against the desk slowly, considering. You know I could just say no. Sure, she said, folding her arms. And I could go somewhere else. Another club. Hell, I could go independent. I've already got 3 clients who'd follow me out the door if I snapped. She let that settle. Or, she added, voice softer now, you can agree to my cut and post a bouncer outside my room. Every time. No exceptions. He doesn't open the door. He doesn't interfere unless I call. But he's there. And the clients know it. Derek swirled the ice in his glass. You think you're too good to play by house rules. No, she said, stepping forward, her green eyes hard as emerald glass. I think I'm smart enough to rewrite them. He didn't respond immediately. The hum of the ice machine from the bar filtered in faintly through the door. A bass thump from the main floor shook the wall behind her. Then Derek smiled again, tight-lipped, reluctant. You're lucky you're good. I'm not lucky, Velvet replied. I'm better. He stood, walked over to a filing cabinet and pulled a blank form. 55 it is. Bouncer's yours. You start next week. Keep it classy, keep it clean. If you turn this into a sideshow, the deal's off. You wouldn't dare, she said flatly. He laughed. You're really something, Velvet. She gave a slow smile and slipped the mask back on. I know. Then she turned and walked out, heels sharp and echoing, posture perfect. Not just a dancer anymore, a negotiator, a brand, a woman who didn't ask for permission, only results. Chapter 6. Welcome back. The apartment smelled like beer and microwave burritos, not fresh ones. The kind left sitting out too long on a chipped plate beside a stained recliner that hadn't reclined in years. Marissa stepped inside and locked the door behind her with a soft click slipping off her hoodie and hanging it on the crooked hook by the entryway. Her heels, cheap sneakers now, made no sound against the warped linoleum. She moved on instinct, quiet, practiced, invisible. The TV was on, blasting a rerun of something no one watched on purpose. Her father was exactly where she'd left him that morning, slumped in the chair in the dark, half drunk and half dressed, surrounded by empty cans and full ashtrays. You're late, he muttered without looking at her. She didn't respond. She dropped her bag on the kitchen counter, opened the fridge, and stared at the contents. Half a jug of expired milk, 2 beers, and a takeout box labelled Don't Touch. She closed it again. I said you're late. I worked, she said flatly. Where? Her hand hovered over a can of soup. She didn't look at him. Bookstore. You don't smell like books, he said, eyes narrowing now. She turned around, meeting his stare from across the room. Maybe because I clean up before I get home. You should try it. That was a mistake. He stood, too fast for how much he'd been drinking, and stumbled forward, knocking over a can. It clattered across the floor and hit the baseboard with a hollow clang. Don't you get smart with me, girl. You think you're better than me? Think you're some kind of saint because you bring in a few bucks? No, she said coldly. I don't think I'm better. I just have to be. That landed. He stopped. One hand braced on the arm of the couch, the other curled into a fist like he forgot what to do with it. You know what your mom would think if she saw you like this? Marissa flinched, but only slightly. She'd be pissed you let the lights get shut off 3 times in one winter, she snapped. She'd be pissed you sold her ring for liquor. She'd be. He threw the beer can. It missed, clattered harmlessly into the wall and exploded in a foamy hiss. She didn't move, didn't flinch again, just stood there, staring at him as beer dripped down the drywall and puddled near the floor vent. Then, quietly, she turned, grabbed her bag, and walked down the hall to her room. She shut the door behind her, locked it. The room was small but clean. Her safe zone. Fairy lights above the bed. A full-length mirror with sticky notes on the frame. Makeup bag zipped and tucked under the nightstand. A wooden jewellery box holding exactly one item. The collar. She sat on the bed, exhaled hard and reached for it. Ran her fingers over the worn leather. Over the key that had started as decoration and become something more. A symbol. A boundary. A truth. Out there, I'm Velvet. In here, I'm Marissa. And he doesn't get to break either of us. Chapter 7. Cracks in the Mask. The hum of fluorescent lights was louder than usual. Marissa sat in the back corner of her third period English class, pretending to underline sentences in a copy of The Catcher in the Rye she hadn't actually read past chapter 3. Her notebook was open, but the page was blank except for the date, written 3 different times in slightly different handwriting. Sleep clawed at the edges of her vision. Her body was here, but her mind was stuck somewhere between the club's private rooms and the silence of her locked bedroom. At the front of the class, Mr. Callan leaned against his desk. Mid-30s. Polished but not intimidating. He had a kindness in his eyes that made most of the girls in class giggle behind their books, but Marissa had always kept her head down when he looked her way. Today, she felt his eyes land on her and stay there. "Marissa," he said gently as the bell rang. "Can I see you for a minute?" A low ripple of teenage curiosity passed through the class as backpacks zipped and chairs scraped. Jessie shot her a look, subtle but questioning, before disappearing with the crowd. Marissa moved slowly, rolling her sleeves down, pressing her lips into a line. She approached the desk with her arms crossed, shoulders drawn in, like she was shrinking herself without realizing. "Is something wrong?" she asked, eyes avoiding his. "Not exactly," Mr. Callan replied. He stood and gestured for her to sit in the empty chair by his desk. "I just wanted to check in. I've noticed. You've been different lately." She stayed standing. "Different how?" "You're quieter. More tired. You've missed a few assignments. And when you are here, it feels like you're somewhere else. A beat. I'm fine. Are you?" Silence stretched between them. He didn't sound judgmental, just concerned. And somehow that was worse. "Look, I know high school isn't exactly easy for anyone, but I'm here if you need anything. Academic or otherwise." Her throat tightened. Not because she wanted to cry, because she wanted to laugh, if he knew. If he had any idea where she really was last night, what she was wearing, what she was doing, who she had to become just to pay the heat bill. She didn't need a tutor. She needed sleep, a safe place, and a version of herself that didn't vanish when the music stopped. "Thanks," she said, "but I'm okay." "You sure?" he asked, watching her carefully. "Yeah," she forced a smile. "Just tired." He nodded slowly, sensing the wall but not pushing. "All right. But if that ever changes, you know where to find me." "I do." She turned and walked out before he could say anything else. The noise returned in full. Lockers slamming, shoes squeaking, conversations bleeding into each other. But her mind wasn't on school anymore. It was on the offer. On the upcoming first private dance she'd agreed to. Her way, with her rules. On whether one extra curtain would really be enough to protect her from the weight of being seen that closely. It was on the bouncer she requested and the clients who were already whispering, watching her with new hunger. And it was on Mr. Callan's voice, calm, careful, human. "Are you okay?" She wasn't sure anymore. Because if people were starting to see her, at school in the dark in their questions and stares, then the problem wasn't the stage. It was how much of Marissa was starting to leak through Velvet's mask. And the mask. It only worked as long as no one looked too close. Chapter 8. Tilted Balance. The late bell rang as Marissa slipped into her seat, notebook already open and blank in front of her. She barely noticed. Her head buzzed. Not from noise, but from noise deprivation. Her life had become a cycle of adrenaline and silence, performance and retreat, spotlight and shadow. And now? Now it was catching up. She hadn't turned in 2 assignments this week. She couldn't remember what day it was without checking her phone. She'd used concealer under her eyes, but it did little against the half-moons etched into her skin from 4-hour naps between shifts. Mr. Callan's words still echoed in her head. "You're not here anymore." And he was right. Marissa was burning both ends of the candle and using the fire to keep her world from collapsing. She stared out the window as her math teacher droned about slope intercepts and cumulative review packets. Outside, the trees had started to bloom. 1 month until summer break. 1 month of finals, projects, GPA. 1 month to keep my mask from cracking. At lunch, she didn't eat. Just sat on the courtyard steps, hoodie pulled up, water bottle between her knees, watching kids with lives simpler than hers joke and argue over fries. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app to do. Algebra review. English paper, 1,500 words, due Friday. Call gas company, pay rent next week. Tell Derek, cut weekday shifts. Keep weekends only. She stared at that last line for a long moment. Cut shifts. Fewer tips, less exposure, more time to sleep, to study, to breathe. Velvet was rising fast, but Marissa still had to graduate, still had to finish the year without collapsing. If I don't make it to summer, this whole balancing act breaks. She thumbed her screen off and leaned her head back against the wall, letting the sun hit her face. For just a second, she let herself imagine a summer where she didn't need to wear a mask every night. Chapter 9. The Cut. The club wasn't even open yet when Velvet walked in. The lights were half on. Staff were mopping floors. A faint buzz of prep work hummed in the air. Backstage, someone was testing the sound system. She walked through the space like she owned it, her gym bag slung over one shoulder, hoodie zipped to her collarbone. No makeup, no mask, not yet. Derek was in his office, as always, drink already half poured though the sun was barely down. He looked up when she entered, surprised, and not in the good way. "You're early. I need to talk." He gestured to the seat across from him like it was a formality, but she stayed standing. "I'm cutting my weekday shifts," she said. "Effective now. Weekends only until summer." Derek laughed once, sharp and short. "You're joking." "I'm not." "You're my highest earner. You want to cut hours a month before tourist season, while every guy in this city is lining up to see you strip shadows from the walls." Velvet's arms crossed slowly. "You said it yourself. I'm the highest earner. So you'll survive 2 fewer nights." Derek stood now, voice low and dangerous. "You don't tell me how my floor works, girl. You're good, but you're not irreplaceable." Velvet's eyes didn't flinch. "Then replace me." Silence, heavy and cold. "Pull me off the schedule, Derek. I'll have a new job by midnight, and when I leave, I take my name with me, my clients, my image. I'm the mystery they pay for. You think you can recreate Velvet overnight? Don't test me. I'm not." Her voice didn't rise. "I'm giving you a courtesy." "A courtesy," he repeated, incredulous. "You don't want me on bad terms, Derek. Because if I walk, I don't burn bridges, I detonate them." They locked eyes. Then something in his face shifted. He knew it. She was right. He could bully a dozen girls, could guilt, pressure, threaten. But Velvet wasn't like them anymore. She'd built a brand, a following, a myth. She was a draw, not a warm body. "Weekends only," he muttered. "Don't make me regret this." "You already do," she said calmly. "Now you just don't want to lose money, too." She turned and walked out. No mask, no makeup, just Marissa in a hoodie. But even in sneakers, even without the collar, her footsteps echoed like she was still in heels. And Derek didn't say another word. Chapter 10. Breathing room. The halls of Sherman High weren't quieter, but for once Marissa was. No red lights, no late nights, no heels, corsets, or keys swinging at her throat, just sneakers, notebooks, and the dull hum of normal. She'd told Derek the truth. Weekends only, and for the first time in weeks, she meant it. Monday and Tuesday passed without incident. No performances, no Velvet, just school, silence, and a stack of assignments she was finally catching up on. She wasn't ahead, but she wasn't drowning. At home, though, her presence didn't go unnoticed. Now that she wasn't vanishing every night, her father had more time to notice when she was around, and more time to pick at the wound that hadn't scabbed over in years. "You're home again?" he grunted, cracking a can. "Yeah." "What, they fire you?" "No," I cut back. "Huh." Sip. "Well, maybe you'll have time to clean the damn kitchen now." She didn't answer. Just walked to her room and shut the door, slowly, so it wouldn't slam. By Wednesday, things had almost started to feel normal. She turned in her English paper, finished her math quiz without zoning out, even managed a quiet joke with Jessie in chemistry. But when the last bell rang and the building started to empty, her fingers hovered over her phone. Alyssa's still unread messages, still unopened emotions, still a part of her life she'd kept at a distance. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't know how to bridge Velvet and Marissa in front of someone she loved. She finally texted, "After school tomorrow. Your place, just us. No mask. No clients. No money on the line. Just a girl she missed. And a part of herself she wasn't sure how to explain." Chapter 11, Just Us. Alyssa's house always smelled like clean laundry and popcorn. Marissa hadn't even knocked. She never had to. The front door was already cracked, and Alyssa's voice was calling from the kitchen before she'd crossed the threshold. "Bring your gremlin self in here and tell me if this popcorn smells burned." Marissa grinned for the first time all week. She dropped her bag by the door and kicked off her shoes. "If it smells like regret and sadness, it's done," she called back. Alyssa's laugh echoed through the house. "Perfect. Just the flavour I was going for." The living room was already set up for movie night. Blankets, pillows, a stack of DVDs no one would actually use because Netflix existed. Alyssa walked in with a huge bowl of popcorn and 2 cans of peach soda under her arm. Marissa flopped onto the couch. "So what's the plan?" she asked. "Cringe rom-coms or true crime where everyone's suspicious and no one's hot?" "You say that like it's a hard choice." Alyssa raised an eyebrow. "Serial killers and snack food. Always." "God, I've missed this," Marissa said without thinking. Alyssa paused but didn't push. "Yeah," she said softly. "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, munching popcorn, feet tangled in blankets. The TV flickered with cold case drama, but neither of them was really watching. Alyssa nudged her with a socked foot. "You doing okay, though?" "Like, actually?" Marissa hesitated. "I'm tired. But I'm managing." "You're always tired." "That's just my brand." "Your brand needs a nap and emotional support tacos." Marissa laughed. Really laughed. "I'm not crying in a Taco Bell again, Alyssa." "Once was enough." "For you." "I'm still emotionally scarred." They dissolved into a fit of laughter that didn't feel forced for once. No stage lights, no heels, no key at her throat. Just popcorn, dumb TV, and her best friend making bad jokes. Later, when Alyssa fell asleep mid-episode and the popcorn bowl sat half empty between them, Marissa looked over at her. Peaceful, uninvolved, safe. She thought about telling her. Just a little. Just enough to ease the pressure. But the words stuck in her throat. Because once she knew, she could never unknow. And secrets, once broken, had a way of spreading. So Marissa lay back and closed her eyes, memorizing the feel of a night without expectation. She didn't know how many more she'd get. Chapter 12, The Line Between. Friday started like any other. Too early, too loud, too many kids pretending they weren't just barely hanging on before summer break hit like a storm. Marissa moved through the morning with quiet focus. Hoodie up, earbuds in, phone tucked deep in her pocket. She felt lighter after the night at Alyssa's, like someone had let the pressure valve huff out just enough steam to keep her functional. But peace had an expiration date, and hers arrived during 5th period. "All right," said Mr. Leary, clapping his hands as the bell rang. "Pop quiz time." A chorus of groans erupted. Marissa didn't make a sound, just blinked hard, opened her folder and grabbed a pen that barely worked. 12 questions. No phones, no notes. This is just to see where you are before finals. Marissa exhaled. She'd reviewed the material. Kind of. She wasn't unprepared, just mentally elsewhere. Her brain was split between chemical reactions and crowd control, between balancing equations and balancing on heels in front of strangers. Still, she powered through. By the last question, her hand was shaking. Not with fear, just from sheer mental fatigue. When the bell rang again, she handed in her paper and left without looking back. At home, her father was passed out on the couch. Again. She stepped over an empty can, grabbed her bag, and headed to her room. Tonight was it. Her first shift since cutting back, her first private dance under her terms. Velvet's terms, 55/45, no touching. Bouncer at the door, her rules. But her stomach still twisted, not from fear of them, from fear of her. What if the mask slipped? What if she liked the control too much? What if something happened that she couldn't take back? She changed slowly, corset, tights, light makeup. She paused at the final touch, the collar. Her fingers traced the silver key dangling from the center. Then she fastened it around her neck, steady. Let them stare. Tonight, Velvet was watching back. She grabbed her bag, her mask, and stepped out into the dark. Chapter 13. Framed. The parking lot behind the Velvet room was half full, the street lamps buzzing faintly overhead, like they were already tired of the night. Velvet stepped out of the rideshare car, tugged her coat tighter around her corset, bag over one shoulder, mask in hand, the key at her throat glinting in the low light like it had something to prove. She walked up to the back entrance like she always did, confident, measured, silent, and then she saw it. Her steps slowed. Just outside the front lobby entrance, behind the glass, taped to the wall in a cheap plastic frame, a poster, black background, velvet red lettering, and in the center a photo, half-lit, soft-focused, striking. A woman in motion, corset tight. One leg curled around the pole, head tilted back, black hair cascading down her shoulder. A silver key catching stage light at just the right moment, and a crimson silk mask covering her eyes. The caption read, "Friday, Saturday only, Velvet Untouchable." She stared for a second, then again. It took her longer than it should have to recognize it was her. The angle was just right. The light softened the edges, but it was her. Someone had taken the photo during a set, without telling her, without permission. She stood still in the hallway, bag slipping slightly off her shoulder. Not panic, not embarrassment, violation, her image, her rules, and they'd taken both. She turned and walked inside without a word. Backstage, the dressing room buzzed with energy. Lashes, heels, perfume, tension, girls adjusting outfits, bouncers passing by with clipboards, one speaker thumping with bass they hadn't turned down yet. Velvet dropped her bag and opened it in front of her usual mirror, keeping her expression blank. She didn't have time to spiral. Not now. Not before her first night back. The door opened, and Sasha, the floor manager for the dancers, stepped inside with her usual click-click heels and clipboard tucked under one arm. "Velvet. Glad you're here." Velvet turned, eyes narrowed just enough to register displeasure. "I didn't authorize that poster." Sasha raised an eyebrow but didn't pause. "Marketing didn't use your name. It's a stage shot, clean. You're a draw. Derek's pushing for full houses this weekend." Velvet's jaw tensed. "They didn't ask. They don't have to. You signed the performance waiver, remember?" Velvet didn't respond. She had signed it. Buried in the fine print when she was 17 and desperate. She hadn't been Velvet then, just a girl trying not to fall apart. Sasha moved on like the moment hadn't even mattered. "You're opening the second block tonight. After your first set, take 10, then start working the floor." "Working the floor," Velvet repeated. "Make yourself visible. Smile, flirt a little, make sure they know you're available for private bookings." She paused, then softened only a little. "It's your first weekend-only slot. You're the feature now. Own it." Velvet stood still for a long moment, watching her own reflection in the mirror. The mask waited on the vanity. The key rested against her collarbone. They were supposed to protect her. Now they were part of the ad campaign. Smile, flirt, be available. Her fingers closed slowly around the mask. "I'll do my set," she said quietly. "Then I'll choose who sees me." Sasha offered a tight nod and clicked away down the hallway. Velvet sat down, stared into the mirror, and pulled the mask over her face. Not to hide. To remind herself who's in charge. Even if they put her on the wall, The real power didn't start until she stepped on the stage. Chapter 14. Spotlight. The music thumped low and slow like a heartbeat. Velvet stood in the shadows of the stage wings, one heel slightly behind the other, masked and ready. The silver key at her throat rested like a blade. Her hands didn't tremble. Not anymore. The stage manager gave a nod. Her cue. She stepped out into the light. Heat hit first. Stage lights. Brutal, white, hot. A wall of brightness that erased the crowd from view. It was like dancing into the sun. She couldn't see past the first row of tables, just silhouettes, shifting shapes beyond the haze. And that was how she liked it. In the spotlight, she wasn't seen. She was projected. A fantasy. A dream behind red filters and strobe lights. The music swelled. She grabbed the pole with one gloved hand and spun slowly, letting the silver pendant catch the light. Letting the crowd take her in. Not fast, not cheap. Velvet moved like smoke across a mirror, every step practiced, every gesture telling them exactly how little they could touch. She heard them, but didn't see them. Whistles, cheers. Someone shouted her name, but it sounded far away. Distant, like they were yelling into a cathedral and she was just the statue at the altar. 10 minutes. That's all she gave them. And by the end of it, the edge of the stage was lined with folded bills. Crisp, careful, desperate. She didn't bow. Velvet never bowed. She turned and walked off into the dark. Backstage, her breathing slowed. Her hands steady. Her mind sharp. Sasha nodded at her from across the corridor. Velvet nodded back. Work the floor. Right. She pulled her robe on loosely, heels still clicking, mask still on, shoulders squared, the key hanging like it meant everything. Then she stepped past the curtain and saw them. The bar was packed, every booth, every stool, every table, and this time there was no light in her eyes. She saw them, faces, eyes, grins, hands clutching drinks, mouths whispering, heads turning to follow her. They weren't shadows anymore, they weren't vague shapes in the dark, they were watching her. And worse, they had always been watching her. She had just never been able to see it. The air shifted in her lungs, her spine locked. For a second, not fear, but something close to nakedness. These weren't faceless patrons. These were men, strangers, looking, tracking her. And for the first time, she realized they had seen her every time. She hadn't just been performing, she had been on display. She adjusted her robe, stood straighter, and moved through the crowd like a queen. But inside, a tremor began, not of weakness, but of awareness. Chapter 15. In the Wings. Velvet kept walking. One hand grazed the edge of the bar, a smooth pass through a sea of bodies and eyes. She kept her movements fluid, practiced, shoulders up, chin high, eyes ahead. But inside, her pulse roared like the bass line. She couldn't stop seeing their faces, and so many, too many, all of them clear now, staring, tracking, judging, consuming. She passed a booth where a man in a suit murmured to another, and both looked at her like she was a rumour made flesh. Another leaned closer to his drink and smirked as if he already knew what she looked like without the mask. They've always seen me. I just never saw them. Her fingers brushed the edge of the curtain, slipping behind it as soon as she reached the hallway. The moment she passed the divider and the crowd disappeared behind soundproof padding and backlighting, her breath shuddered out of her chest, like she'd been holding it for a mile. The dressing room door clicked shut behind her, and only then did she stop moving. She stood in front of her mirror, hands gripping the edge of the vanity, mask still on, silver key rising and falling with each breath. She wasn't crying, she wasn't panicking, but she was realizing just how thin the line really was between being Velvet and being seen. You all right? The voice was gentle, calm, a woman's voice. She turned to see Shayla, the stage manager, early 30s, poised, grounded, in soft black flats and a headset. She'd been there longer than any of the dancers. Everyone respected her. She didn't talk much, but she watched everything. Velvet straightened, wiping her hands down her robe instinctively. Yeah, she said automatically. I'm fine. Shayla raised one eyebrow. That's the line we all use. Doesn't mean it's true. Velvet looked down, said nothing. Shayla crossed the room and leaned against the edge of the counter beside her. First time's always a little louder than you expect. Not the music. The stares. Velvet nodded, still looking at her reflection. I didn't realize how many people were watching until I could see them. They've always been watching, Shayla said. But knowing that and feeling it? Two different things. They were quiet for a moment. The hum of club music pulsed faintly through the walls, but in here, it felt far away, like a memory, not a moment. You're not weak for needing a second to pull yourself together, Shayla added. You're smart. Velvet let out a slow breath, the first real one in minutes. I felt like I was being hunted. You were, Shayla said, but you're not prey. You're the one holding the leash, don't forget that. Velvet met her eyes. Thank you. Take your time, Shayla said, pushing off the counter. You're the feature tonight. The room's yours. You move when you're ready. Velvet turned back to the mirror as Shayla left, the door clicking gently behind her. She touched the key again. She didn't feel fully steady, but she remembered who she was and why she wore the mask. Chapter 16. Working the room. The noise hit her again like a slow tide when she stepped out from behind the curtain, but this time she was ready for it. Velvet walked the floor with purpose, chin high, steps slow, robe flowing just enough to suggest movement beneath without giving too much away. The club was still packed. Heat shimmered under the lights, glasses clinked at the bar, voices murmured low like background static tuned to her presence. And the eyes? They locked on her the second she moved. It wasn't the fantasy anymore. It was her, up close, in reach, in full view. And younger than they expected. She saw it in their expressions, momentary flashes of hesitation, disbelief, fascination. The smooth features, the small frame, the bright eyes behind the mask. They'd seen her from a distance. But here, inches away, she didn't look like the others. She looked like someone who maybe shouldn't be here. A few men straightened when she passed. One even cleared his throat, unsure if approaching her would get him thrown out or thrown deeper in debt. She didn't blink. She smiled, and then, without thinking, it slipped out. Well now, sugar, you look like trouble in a suit. The man blinked, caught off guard. So was she. That wasn't Marissa's voice, that was Velvet's, soft, sultry, southern. She hadn't planned it. It just happened. And it worked. The man grinned, lifting his glass like a toast. Only on weekends. Lucky me, she said, letting the accent stay. It gave her something to hide behind, a character, a boundary. She moved on, letting the twang curl just right around every darlin and hon. By the time she reached the back corner near the private booths, a man in a navy vest stood and stepped politely aside as she passed. He didn't reach for her, didn't leer. Just smiled and nodded once. She paused. He was older but not ancient. Mid-40s maybe. Clean cut. The quiet type who didn't need to prove anything in front of his friends. He met her eyes. Not her chest, not her thighs, but her. You're Velvet, he said simply. She nodded once, mask tilted like a game of cards. That's right, darling. You interested in a little privacy? If you're offering. I'm considering it, she said, but only if you play nice. The man smiled. No teeth, no bravado. Just calm. I always do. Velvet turned, her robe catching a hint of stage light. Wait by the curtain. I'll let the bouncer know. And just like that, she'd made her first choice. Not the loudest man, not the biggest tipper. The one who looked, not took. Backstage, she gave a short nod to the bouncer who'd already been briefed. He's mine, she said. Private room too. Door stays open. You don't leave the post. You got it. As she walked toward the room, her heart thudded, not with fear but awareness. This was the next step. Velvet was in control now. And Marissa? She was watching from behind the mask. Chapter 17. The Private Room. The hallway to the private rooms was narrower than it looked from the floor, tight enough to make her heels sound louder, like they echoed off decisions that hadn't been made yet. Velvet walked first. The client followed. And the bouncer, big as a tree trunk, took position just outside room 2, arms folded, eyes locked forward. She paused at the door. "You remember the rules, sugar?" she asked, her accent smooth as bourbon. The man nodded. "Look, don't touch. I'm a guest, not the owner." Just making sure we understand each other." She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, intentionally warm. No stage lights here, just red glow sconces and a long couch that curved like a question mark. A small speaker played a soft instrumental version of something sultry and expensive. Velvet moved to the center of the room. Let the door close behind her. She didn't take off her robe yet, not immediately. Instead, she walked in slow circles around him as he sat, her eyes scanning his posture, his breath, his hands. Not nervous, but not arrogant either. She liked that. He didn't speak, didn't rush, just waited. She stopped 2 feet in front of him and finally let the robe slip off her shoulders. Beneath it, she wore a deep red 2-piece trimmed in satin. Nothing flashy, everything precise. Her mask caught the ambient light like it had secrets to tell. The key at her collar stayed in place. "You comfortable?" she asked him lightly. "I am now." Velvet smiled without showing teeth, then began. She didn't rush. This wasn't the stage. There was no heat from spotlights, no crowd raw behind the walls, just her, the music, and one pair of eyes. She moved deliberately, every shift of her hips calculated, every turn a message. She stayed just out of reach, letting the nearness speak louder than any touch could. And all the while she watched him. How he responded, when his breath changed. What parts of her performance pulled his attention? Not because she cared what he felt, but because this was her classroom now, and Velvet was studying. She moved close enough for the heat of her skin to register, for the shimmer of her perfume to settle in the air between them. Then she leaned forward, one hand on the back of the couch, inches from his shoulder. "You come here often, darling?" "Not like this," he said quietly. "No," she said, "you haven't seen me before." She lingered a beat. Just one. Then pivoted away, letting the distance remind him who ran the room. By the end of the set, she hadn't touched him once. And still, when the music faded, the man sat like he'd just been through something sacred. Velvet slipped the robe back over her shoulders, slow and regal. "Hope I didn't disappoint." "Far from it." "Good," she said, walking to the door. "Then maybe next time you'll be lucky enough to earn another." She gave a nod to the bouncer on her way out. No glance back, no stumble. And as she walked back to the dressing room, she realized her hands weren't shaking. Not at all. Velvet had handled it. All of it. And Marissa? She wasn't scared anymore. Chapter 18. Reflections. The night didn't slow down. If anything, it built momentum. Her second set hit harder than the first, more deliberate, more daring. She didn't overthink it. Velvet moved like she knew the room was hers, because it was. By the third set, men were waiting near the floor before she even stepped out. Folded bills ready, drinks forgotten, phones kept respectfully down. The bouncer had been clear. No photos. No exceptions. Anyone who disrespected the rule didn't get a second chance. They wanted her to like them. And Velvet? She chose carefully. 5 more private dances. She took each one with the same composure as the first. Every room a test of poise, distance, and dominance. Every man a different tempo, a different read. Some tried small talk, others tried silence. One cracked a joke about her mask, and she turned on her heel so fast he apologized without prompting. "Velvet doesn't do disrespect," she'd said sweetly. Southern lilt like honey over barbed wire. By the 4th, she was tired. By the 5th, she was wired. Adrenaline and rhythm, tension and release. She handled them all, and not one hand laid a finger on her. It was after 2 a.m. when she finally made it back to the dressing room. The club had thinned, music still pulsed but slower now, last call energy drifting through the walls. Velvet sat in front of the mirror, mask still on, makeup smudged just slightly at the corner of one eye. She leaned forward, elbows on the counter, watching her reflection like it might move on its own. Then the door creaked open. Shayla, calm as ever, stepped inside holding a small black envelope. "This yours?" she said simply, offering it to her. Velvet blinked once and took it with 2 fingers. It was thicker than expected. She opened it slowly. Bills, tidy counted, folded twice, tucked between a breakdown of her stage earnings, her private dance rate, and her agreed-upon split. She read the total once, then again, then sat back and exhaled. "You earned every cent," Shayla said. "They were talking about you all night, like you were made of smoke and gold." Velvet didn't answer right away. She just stared at the number, and then said softly, "They all saw me." Shayla tilted her head. "But they didn't get to have you." "There's a difference." Velvet nodded once, still staring at the mirror, still listening to the girl beneath the mask. Chapter 19. Real Life Can't Wait. The knock on her bedroom door wasn't loud, but it was loud enough. Marissa's eyes snapped open. The ceiling blurred into view, morning light already sliding through the blinds. Shit. She bolted upright, instinctively checking the time on her phone. 11:42 a.m. She was supposed to be at the bank by 10:30. She didn't even hear her alarm, didn't remember falling asleep. Just remembered the envelope, the money, tucked behind the false bottom of her dresser drawer. Velvet had earned it, but Marissa had bills to pay. The knock came again. This time, heavier. Her dad. "Marissa." "That damn power's still on the warning notice. Don't think I didn't see it on the door." She didn't answer, just pulled her hoodie over her tank top, stuffed her hair into a messy bun, grabbed the envelope, and slipped into her sneakers. The bank lobby was nearly empty by the time she got there. She didn't bother with makeup. Barefaced, bags under her eyes, a wrinkled receipt in one hand, and the black envelope in the other. "3 money orders," she told the teller, "made out to Kalamazoo Electric." The teller didn't blink, just started processing. Marissa counted out the bills slowly, hoping the total was enough. It was. Barely. The receipt hit the counter with a soft thunk. A whisper of stability. She took it with both hands, folded it once, and shoved it deep in her jacket pocket, like it might protect her from the rest of the day. She got to the utility office with less than 15 minutes before closing. The guy behind the glass didn't even look up when she slid the envelope under the slot. "Cut-off was Monday," he said flatly. "Yeah," she said, "but the grace period's still open." "I'm paid in full." He finally glanced up. "You're good." Lights stay on. For now. Back home, the house was quiet again. Her dad was gone, probably out with friends or looking for a beer that didn't exist in the fridge anymore. She tossed her hoodie on the back of the chair, pulled open the drawer, and put the envelope away. What was left of it anyway? Velvet had made a killing last night. Marissa had just enough to keep the lights on. She sat on the edge of her bed staring at her shoes for a long time, then lay back, arms flopped out beside her. No mask, no stage, just the girl no one clapped for. Chapter 20. No time left. The shower was scorching, just the way she liked it after a long night and a longer morning. Marissa leaned against the tiled wall, letting the water hammer down over her shoulders. She wasn't thinking. Not really. Just counting tasks in her head like a mantra. Pack bag. Brush out the wig. Check mask. Clean heels. Repack. The envelope from last night, what was left of it, sat in her room behind a stack of textbooks. A different kind of emergency kit. One that kept the lights on, the water running, and the roof solid enough to not fall in. She scrubbed her skin hard as if Velvet's perfume might still be clinging somewhere beneath the surface. By the time she stepped out, towel around her head, she moved with purpose. Her duffel was already open. Black robe, folded heels, fresh lashes still in the case, hair tied up tight under a beanie. No one needed to know what she was heading off to do. She double-checked everything, no part of Velvet left behind. Just Marissa now. Hoodie, jeans, plain shoes. No glamour, no drama. All business. She zipped the duffel and grabbed her keys. Then the front door opened. Not now. She froze in the hallway, bag slung over one shoulder. Her dad stumbled in with a plastic bag in one hand and a six-pack in the other. Only two were missing. His eyes were a little red, but he wasn't slurring. Not yet. He blinked when he saw her. "Hey," he said slower than usual. "You heading out?" "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just for a bit. I'll be back late." He looked her over. The jacket, the rushed breath, the bag. "You always got that bag lately." She didn't answer. He shifted, setting the six-pack on the counter like it suddenly felt too heavy. Then rubbed the back of his neck, awkward, maybe even guilty. "Look, I've been thinking. About a lot of things. How I've been acting. What I've been missing. Maybe we could talk. Just for a minute." Marissa blinked. That wasn't what she expected. And it hurt more because of that. "Dad, I can't." "Not tonight." "It's always not tonight," he muttered, not angry, just tired. That landed worse than shouting. She shifted her grip on the bag. "It's not like that." "Then what's it like?" he asked, voice low. "You got secrets now?" "I don't even know what job you got. Don't know where you go. Don't know when you sleep." She looked at him. Really looked. The man who used to make her pancakes on Sundays. The one who hadn't noticed the final shut-off notice on the fridge. The one who had no idea she'd paid it. He waited, and she had nothing she could say. "I have to go," she whispered, slipping past him. He didn't stop her, didn't yell, just let the door close behind her like it always did. And Marissa walked out into the cold evening air, knowing Velvet didn't have a father waiting at home. Chapter 21. Silence Between Songs. The rideshare was quiet. The driver didn't say much, just a nod and a, "You headed to Crossway?" before letting the hum of the road fill the silence. Marissa had slid into the back seat without speaking. She pressed her forehead to the cold window and watched the city blur by, lights melting into one another like oil on water. She didn't check her phone, didn't scroll, didn't distract. Her thoughts were too loud. Before everything fell apart, there had been laughter. Her mom had this way of filling a house, not just with sound, but with warmth. Music always playing. A candle burning in the kitchen. Little touches. A scarf tossed over the chair. A note scribbled on a napkin. A joke whispered when no one else was around. She remembered Sunday mornings. Pancakes, all three of them in their pajamas, and her dad singing off-key on purpose just to make her mom roll her eyes and laugh. It had been good. So stupidly, wonderfully good. And when her mom got sick, it was like a crack appeared in the glass, and nobody knew how fast it would spiderweb through everything. Her dad hadn't handled it well. At first he tried, stayed strong in the hospital, held her mum's hand, slept in the chair, made Marissa's lunches, paid the bills, said all the right things. But when she was gone, so was he. Not physically. He was still in the house, still breathing, still there. But his eyes never looked the same again. And after the funeral, it was like her father got buried right alongside her mother, just in a different way. She couldn't be mad at him for that. Not really. He loved her, loved them both, but he didn't know how to stand without the person who kept him upright. So Marissa had learned to keep going, to take up the space her mother used to fill, to pay bills, keep grades up, smile when people asked how she was doing. And now? She danced in heels and wore a mask and went by a name no one at home would recognize. Not because she wanted to, not really, but because somebody had to keep the lights on. She exhaled sharply and blinked fast, wiped the corner of her eye before anything could fall. Velvet couldn't cry. The car pulled to a stop at the alley behind Crossway Lounge. Marissa sat still for one extra beat, feeling the gravity shift inside her. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out the black wig, and started the transformation. Chapter 22, Velvet Backstage. The back door of the Crossway Lounge was unmarked, lit only by a red bulb above the steel frame. Marissa knocked once, short and firm. The inside latch clicked. Drew, the bouncer who manned the back, looked her over like always. Never weird about it, just doing his job. "You're late." "I'm never late," she said, slipping past him with a smirk. He grunted, amused, and let the door swing closed behind her. Inside, the dressing room buzzed with motion. Lashes, glitter, perfume, music bleeding faintly through the walls. The kind of chaos that had a rhythm once you got used to it. Marissa slipped past a pile of costumes, heading straight for her mirror. Velvet's mirror now. No one else touched that stool anymore. She hung up her jacket, opened the duffel, and began the change. Wig first. Then the smoky eyes. Bold liner. Lashes. She worked fast, but careful. Fingers steady, expression calm. The mask went on last. Silk, matte black, fitted perfectly to her cheekbones. And just like that, Marissa was gone. Across the room, Sierra, one of the longest-working dancers at Crossway, paused mid-mascara and glanced over. Well, look who showed up to keep the bar busy. Velvet raised an eyebrow in the mirror. "I aim to please." "No complaints here," Sierra smirked. "Takes pressure off the rest of us. Guys get greedy, but their wallets stay open." Velvet caught her eyes. It wasn't quite a compliment, but it wasn't shade either. It was acknowledgement. "They don't come for me," Sierra added, adjusting her top. "But they stay for us all. You keep drawing them in like that, you'll make friends fast." "Wasn't trying to," Velvet said softly. "Good," another voice chimed in. Roxy, petite, sharp-eyed, working a rhinestone choker onto her neck. "Means you won't owe nobody nothing." She met Velvet's eyes in the mirror. "But for real?" "Good set last night. Real control. You had 'em eating out of your hand." Velvet smiled just a little. "Thanks. No fanfare. No group hug." But the air had changed. She wasn't just the new girl anymore. She was the girl who brought money. A knock on the dressing room door broke the rhythm. 10 minutes, Shayla called. Velvet closed her makeup case with a quiet click and stood. "Time to work," she said to no one in particular. But Sierra still smiled behind her lipstick tube. "Go show 'em what the velvet touch feels like." Chapter 23. Game time. The dressing room felt smaller when you were waiting. The music throbbed faintly through the walls, bass lines and beats marking time like a slow countdown. Velvet sat on her stool, one leg crossed tightly over the other, fingers tapping lightly on her knee. Her mask was already in place. The lashes framed her green eyes like soft daggers. But under it all? She still got nervous. Always before the first dance. Heart ticking too fast, mouth a little dry, that tiny voice in the back of her mind whispering, "What if tonight's different?" She'd learned to ignore it, mostly. Tonight she was last in the rotation. Shayla's call, wanted to end the first cycle with a bang, keep the crowd buzzing, their drinks flowing, their wallets loose. "You're the dessert," Shayla had said with a wink. "Let the others serve the appetizers." Velvet didn't argue. She just nodded and waited her turn. 5 dancers tonight. As each one finished her set, she came in glowing with sweat and glitter, cheeks flushed, hair tousled. And each brought intel, small, critical details passed like currency between competitors who'd learned that survival meant playing smart. Roxy came in first, unstrapping her boots and flopping onto the worn couch. "Table 4's back," she said, breathless. "The one with the mustache." Same spot, still watching like he's shopping for a wife. Velvet nodded, filing it away. Kia came in next, high ponytail swaying, smirking as she peeled off her gloves. "VIP2's dead. He's broke or faking. But that guy at the bar, the one with the cufflinks, big tipper, likes eye contact." "And compliments," Sierra added, stepping in behind her. "Told me I had a librarian's grace and a sinner's hips." Everyone groaned. Velvet smirked. "That's impressive." "He's trying hard," Sierra shrugged, wiping down her chest with a towel. He'll crack. You give him the right look, he'll empty his tab. Velvet said nothing, but she was listening. Every name, every drink order, every angle. And yet, her fingers still drummed quietly on her leg. She felt it. The moment coming. Her set. Her song. Her turn under the lights. She didn't even know which playlist Shayla picked yet. It didn't matter. She could move to anything. Could make anything look like seduction laced with mystery. But inside, Marissa still buzzed with anxiety. They all see me, but they don't know me. That was the trick. They could watch Velvet, but they would never see Marissa. The door cracked open and Shayla leaned in. Velvet, you're up. Velvet stood, slow and steady, took one last glance in the mirror. Her green eyes blinked once beneath the mask. Then she said softly to no one in particular, "Time to make 'em forget who they are." Chapter 24. Velvet Rising. The hallway behind the stage was narrow and dim, the black-painted walls lined with faded posters and old tape residue from flyers long torn down. It smelled faintly of hairspray, floor polish, and the metallic buzz of anticipation. Velvet walked alone. Her heels clicked softly against the floor. The duffel was back in the dressing room, the mask was tight and secure, the weight of her stage earrings tugged gently at her ears, familiar and grounding. Her body moved like it already knew the song, even if her mind didn't. At the end of the hallway, she stopped in the wings, just behind the black velvet curtain. The DJ's voice came through the monitor speakers, low and smooth. "All right, Crossway, you've been waiting and waiting, and now it's time." The house crowd whooped and hollered in reply, men leaning closer to the stage, drinks half forgotten in their hands, bills already between fingers. You've seen her name. You've seen the posters. But trust me, you ain't seen anything yet. Velvet rolled her shoulders back once, slow breath in, long breath out. Gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. Put your hands together for the one, the only, Velvet. The lights snapped to life, washing the stage in a rich amber glow. The opening chords of her music hit, low, slow, and sinful. And Velvet stepped into the light. The heat hit her first. Stage lights always burned hot, but tonight it felt personal, like they were trying to melt the mask off her face. But she didn't flinch. She took 3 slow steps forward. Not rushed, not coy, deliberate. Every movement said, "I know what you came for, and I know exactly how to make you want more." The crowd howled. They couldn't see her eyes behind the mask, but they didn't need to. Her presence did all the talking. She moved across the stage like a whisper made flesh, slow, controlled. One hand tracing down her side, the other resting on the pole like it was a dance partner she knew well and trusted with everything except her secrets. The first rotation was slow. Just one leg hooked, one lean back. The crowd reacted to every pause like she was conducting an orchestra of breathless men. She didn't dance like a girl trying to prove herself. She danced like someone who knew they were already won. As the music built, so did she. Faster spins, drops with purpose, arches that stopped hearts mid-beat, and all the while, the mask stayed on. Untouchable, unknowable. A fantasy with no name, only whispers. Velvet worked the front edge of the stage during the last verse, leaning just enough to let them think they were closer than they were. She let her hand trail to her thigh, slow, then flicked her gaze to one man in the front row who had leaned forward too far. She tilted her head, just a little. And he sat back, fast. She smiled. When the music ended, she struck her final pose. One knee bent, hand on the floor, head tilted down. The lights dimmed slowly. The applause rolled in like thunder. And just like that, Velvet stood, turned, and disappeared behind the curtain again. Chapter 25. Velvet on the Floor. The air was thick with cologne, cash, and cheap promises. Velvet drifted into it like a shadow dipped in silk. She didn't need to speak right away. Just her presence made heads turn. She made eye contact like it was a private gift. A glance, a smile, a blink that said, maybe. And when men leaned forward, hungry to be chosen, she let them wait just a little longer. It was part of the dance. Table 4, just like Roxy said, held the man with the mustache. He was older, with a drink in one hand and a napkin full of scribbled numbers in the other. Velvet passed behind him, letting the barest tips of her fingers brush his shoulder. He turned, startled, grinning. She didn't stop, didn't need to. He wasn't ready to spend, but now he'd want to. At the bar, Cufflink Guy watched her like she was the night's only truth. His drink sat untouched. Velvet turned just enough to catch his eye, then broke contact, smiling faintly as she moved on. Let him chase. She paused near a high table where a group of younger guys were laughing too loudly. A few of them had already blown half their wallets on the early sets. Tipsy. Careless. Fun, but not worth it. Still, she stopped, set her hand lightly on the edge of the table. "You're treating these girls right tonight?" she asked, her accent soft and syrupy, Southern Belle in full bloom. The one in the hoodie blinked, mouth half open. Of course." She tilted her head, smiled like mischief wrapped in honey. "Good." Just making sure gentlemen still exist, then walked away. Behind her, someone dropped a drink. At a side booth, Poet Guy nursed a whiskey and scribbled in a leather-bound journal. Sierra said he liked pretty words and direct eye contact. Velvet paused at the edge of his table. He looked up. His pen froze. She didn't sit, didn't speak, just placed one hand palm down on the table near his drink, close but not touching. Her nails glinted under the coloured lights. "Careful," she said, voice just loud enough. "You stare too long at the moon, you'll forget how to breathe." Then she walked away. Behind her, pages fluttered as he flipped to a fresh one. The floor was alive now. They were watching, wanting, whispering. And Velvet? She hadn't even picked yet. But they were ready. All of them. Waiting for a hand on their shoulder, a whisper in their ear, a look that said, "You, right now." And when she found the right one, when she saw the one leaning just a little closer, holding his drink like he needed courage more than alcohol, she knew. "You look like you need a little quiet," she said, sidling up beside him. The man blinked, startled, then nodded. "Private?" She nodded once, sweet and slow. "You got me for the next song. Let's make it worth your time." Velvet let her hand rest gently on the man's forearm, guiding him through the lounge with practiced grace. He wasn't old, but not young either. Somewhere in his 40s, dressed like he wanted to be taken seriously, nervous like he wasn't sure he deserved to be. "Perfect." She smiled under her mask as they passed the row of tables near the bar, weaving through the sea of stairs now tethered to her like strings. The man beside her said nothing, just followed. As she reached the edge of the hallway that led to the private rooms, she glanced left and caught the manager watching her from his usual lean against the far wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But his eyes, they tracked her every step. A slow nod, not flashy, not theatrical, just enough. She held his gaze for half a beat as she passed, long enough to say, "Yeah, you see it too." Down the hallway the air cooled. The music softened. The door ahead bore the sign, "Private Room 2, Reserved." Velvet opened it with her free hand, let the man step in first, then followed, closing the door behind them with a soft click. The lights inside were low, golden. No mirrors, no distractions, just a curved couch, a table for drinks, and a short platform with a single pole, mostly for show. She turned to face him. He'd already sat down, hands folded like he was in confession. Velvet stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "What's your name, sugar?" "Sean." "Well, Sean," she said, voice smooth like caramel sliding off the spoon, "you've got 10 minutes with me. Let's see if we can make you forget what came before it." The door clicked shut behind her, muffling the thrum of the club outside. Inside, the air was warm and still, touched by soft amber light that made everything glow like a faded photograph. Velvet turned slowly, her silhouette framed by the faint shimmer of her costume. Sean sat on the low couch, hands on his knees, nervous but trying not to show it. His tie was loosened, collar unbuttoned, half businessman, half boy who wandered somewhere he never expected to be. She smiled behind the mask. "Relax, sugar. I don't bite, unless you're into that." His laugh came out awkward and short. Velvet stepped forward. "You ever had a dance before, Sean?" "A couple. Not like this." "Good," she said, her voice a hush. "Means I get to be your favorite." She let the music guide her, low and pulsing, not quite slow but not frantic. Velvet didn't rush. She moved with purpose. One hand rested on her own hip as she began to sway, her body finding the rhythm like it lived inside her. With every shift of her weight, every roll of her hips, Sean seemed to sink deeper into the couch, watching without blinking. When she stepped closer, he held his breath. When she turned, arching her back, letting her hair fall over one shoulder, he exhaled like he'd forgotten he could. She didn't need to touch him. Not yet. The magic was in the nearness. In the moments where she leaned in close enough to let him smell her perfume, but didn't let him breathe it in for long. Where her fingers ghosted just above his knee, never settling, always promising more. "You're real quiet, Sean," she whispered near his ear. "Are you nervous?" "A little," he admitted. She chuckled. "That's all right. First rule in here? Whatever you feel. You get to feel it. No shame." She knelt, legs folded to the side, placing herself just off-center in front of him. The lights caught the shimmer on her skin, and in this angle, up close, her youth was more striking than ever. But her eyes, behind that silk mask, held a maturity that didn't belong to 18. They held power. "Let me take care of you," she said softly. "Just sit back and enjoy the show." And then she moved, arms up, slow body roll, her chest rising with each beat, her expression unreadable except for the curve of her lips and the angle of her jaw. Sean didn't speak again. He didn't have to. When the song neared its final verse, Velvet drew closer, finally placing one knee on the cushion beside him. She leaned in, face inches from his, never touching, just letting her presence weigh heavy in the space between them. "You'll remember this, won't you?" she murmured. "Yeah," he breathed. She smiled, then pulled back, smooth and graceful, ending the dance with one last spin that left her back to him, head turned just enough to look over her shoulder. The song faded out. So did his thoughts. Velvet stood, adjusted the strap on her thigh and smoothed her hair with a practiced hand. Sean reached into his wallet, breath still uneven, and handed her a folded stack of bills without a word. She took it, tucked it away. "Thank you, Sean," she said gently. "You've been lovely." Then she turned and opened the door, letting the music of the lounge flood back in. Chapter 26, Cracks in the Mask. The door to the private room closed softly behind her, and Velvet let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That had gone well. Better than well. Sean had left with stars in his eyes and lighter pockets, just the way it should be. Her steps were light as she made her way back toward the dressing room, weaving through tables and low booths. The music was louder now, the crowd a little looser, intoxication mixing with fantasy in the air like perfume. Velvet kept her posture perfect, her smile effortless, her eyes everywhere, until she saw them. Corner booth. Right side. 3 men. They weren't loud, they weren't throwing bills. They looked out of place. Suits, tidy drinks, the kind of conversation that was all nods and careful words. And right in the centre, leaning back, arms folded, observing the room with quiet focus, was Mr. Halverson, guidance counsellor from Westbrook High. "Number. No, no, no." She didn't break stride. Didn't falter. But her stomach flipped like a switch had been thrown. He hadn't seen her. Not yet. Too many lights. Too much movement. And she was still in motion, masked, Costumed. Velvet. Not Marissa. But it didn't matter. He was here. A piece of her day life. A man who'd once handed her a pamphlet about college grants was sitting in her world, sipping bourbon and watching girls like her take their clothes off. What if he saw me already? What if he recognizes my voice? What if he sees the shape of my mouth and just knows? She rounded a corner and slipped behind the staff door, heart thudding harder now than it had on stage. The dressing room was a welcome blast of perfume, laughter, and music muffled by drywall. Kia was on the couch, reapplying lip gloss. Sierra was fixing her lashes. Nobody looked at her funny when she came in. No one could tell anything was wrong. Velvet beelined to her station, dropped into the chair and grabbed her water bottle. Not too fast, keep it casual. She stared at her reflection, eyes sharp behind the mask, lipstick still perfect. But something had shifted. You good? Roxy asked as she walked by. Yeah, Velvet said with a small smile. Just long night. She sipped her water, wiped her chest and arms again. Forced herself to breathe. But the image wouldn't leave her mind. Mr. Halverson at the corner table, drinking slow, watching girls like he didn't have a care in the world. You don't know me, she thought fiercely. You don't see me. And she prayed it stayed that way. Chapter 27. The One Who Sees. Velvet didn't hear the door close behind her, but she felt the shift, a presence, a pause. Then, something's wrong. The voice came from behind her, calm and even. Shayla, the stage manager, always spoke like that, low and firm, like she'd seen it all and had no time for drama unless it was part of the act. Velvet didn't turn. She sipped her water, focused on her reflection. I'm fine. Liar, Shayla said, not unkindly. Velvet's fingers clenched around the bottle. Just tired. Shayla stepped closer, stopped beside her chair. Not crowding, just present. You came off that floor like a queen. Controlled. Calculated. You were on. And then 10 seconds later, you looked like someone shoved ice down your spine. Velvet didn't answer. Shayla crouched beside her, voice quieter now. You don't have to tell me. But I see you. Something rattled you. Was it a customer? Someone touched you? Velvet blinked, shook her head quickly. No, it's nothing like that. Shayla studied her, then nodded once. Okay. So not physical. Emotional? Silence. Shayla stood again. Look, Velvet, you don't have to explain yourself, but you can if you need to. I'm not management. I'm not the house. I'm the one who makes sure the wolves stay out of the dressing room and the girls don't fall apart between songs. She crossed her arms. I'm a priest, baby. What's said to me stays with me. That's the rule. Velvet stared at her reflection. The mask. The perfect lashes. The illusion. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Finally. I saw someone. Shayla raised an eyebrow, waited. From my other life? School? Counselor? He recognize you? No, I don't think so. But he's here, with 2 others. Just there, watching. She looked down at her hands, suddenly trembling. I thought this place was mine, safe. And now, what if he sees me? What if he knows? Shayla nodded slowly. No shock, no overreaction. That happens sometimes, she said softly. Worlds bleed, but you're still safe. He'd have to stare a long time, and even then, he won't see you. Velvet looked up, eyes sharp behind the mask. You sure? I've been doing this a long time, sugar. They see what they want. A mask, some heels, some glitter, and suddenly, you're a fantasy. Not a person, unless you let them see you. She put a hand lightly on Velvet's shoulder. You haven't done that. So he won't. Velvet took another breath, steadier now. Thanks. You got this. You want to sit out a set? Velvet shook her head. No, I want the next one. Shayla smiled. That's what I thought. Velvet sat at her mirror, dabbing the last trace of sweat from her brow, heart finally settling back into rhythm. She had already made her decision. She would take the next set, mask on, chin up, like nothing had shaken her. But Shayla, ever watchful, was already 3 moves ahead. From across the dressing room, Velvet saw her lean in and speak quietly to Kia and Sierra, 2 of the flashier girls, all legs and lashes and loud laughs. There was no urgency in Shayla's voice, no tell in her posture, just a low comment paired with a smile and a quick tap on Sierra's arm. Kia raised an eyebrow. Sierra smirked. Both nodded. They headed for the door together, hips already swaying, laughing at something Velvet couldn't hear but knew wasn't real. And before following them with her eyes, Shayla turned just enough to catch Velvet's gaze. And winked. Velvet blinked, then smiled. So that's how it is. Out on the floor, the 2 dancers moved with perfect purpose, zeroing in on table 7 like heat-seeking missiles in glitter and eyeliner. Mr. Halverson never saw it coming. Sierra slid onto the bench beside the younger man with him, laughing, leaning in, touching his shoulder as if they were old friends. Kia twirled her fingers across the table, caught Halverson's eye and bent down to whisper something. Velvet could see it from the stage-side monitor. They were covering her. Backstage, Velvet stood slowly, checked her costume one last time, rolled her shoulders, and walked toward the curtain without a flicker of hesitation. She was back in control, and thanks to Shayla, so was the room. Chapter 28. Velvet Keeps the Rhythm. The DJ's voice rolled over the crowd like thunder wrapped in sugar. All right, gents. You asked, you begged, you paid good money to wait, and now the wait is over. Give it up for the one, the only, Velvet. The lights hit the stage like a tidal wave, and then she walked out. She didn't feel shaky. She didn't feel strong. She just felt on. Velvet stepped into the music, moving with the kind of grace you don't have to think about, because it's been drilled into your bones through hours of tension, repetition, and survival. The crowd roared. The bills fluttered. She moved through it like smoke. But tonight, it didn't hit quite the same. Not because she wasn't giving them what they came for. She was. But because she saw their faces now, not blurred shapes under hot lights. Faces, eyes, mouths, men with lines on their cheeks and sweat on their brows, leaning forward with hunger and want and mystery, and for a moment, they looked too real. Still, Velvet kept the rhythm. She worked the stage, spun at the pole like it owed her money, dropped low like gravity was a game she played better than most, flashed a smile that made the front row lean in and open their wallets. And when it was over, the applause echoed, just like it always did. But it didn't feel like victory, just survival. Back in the dressing room, she had barely enough time to wipe down and rehydrate before she was called for 3 more private dances. The first went smoothly. The second, she almost forgot to stay in character. The guy asked her what school she went to, and she played it off with a fake laugh and a new accent, switching to something out of Jersey to throw him off. The third was quiet. An older man. No requests, no questions. Just watched her with soft eyes and tipped her twice. By the time she came off the floor for the last time, her legs were sore and her smile was worn thin. The club was still pulsing, money was still flying. But Velvet, she was done. Shayla met her at the dressing room door with a nod and an envelope. Final cut. You earned it. Velvet took it, nodded back. Thanks, for earlier. That's what I'm here for, baby, Shayla said. Now go home, rest, shake it off. Velvet sat at her mirror one last time, removed the mask slowly, placing it on the vanity like it was breakable. She looked at herself in the mirror, not Velvet, Marissa. Eyes tired, face flushed, still standing, still here. She whispered to her reflection, just 1 more month. Then gathered her things, slid her hoodie on, and slipped out into the night. Just another girl leaving work. Chapter 29. Sunday morning and the money counts. Sunlight filtered through the slats of her blinds, cutting soft stripes across the room like prison bars made of gold. Marissa Lane blinked awake slowly, her limbs heavy from 2 nights of dancing and a week of barely breathing between classes and crisis control. It was Sunday. The world outside was quiet. No school, no club, no obligations until Monday. Just her. And the envelope. She sat up slowly, rubbing her neck, then reached for the thick paper Shayla had handed her hours ago. It was heavier than it looked, weighted with hope. She didn't count it right away. First, she cleared space on her desk, grabbed a notepad, jotted down every overdue bill, rent, $425 past due, power, $91.32, water, $36, groceries, question mark, whatever she could manage. Then finally she emptied the envelope. Stacks of bills, singles, fives, tens, a few 20s, a couple of 50s. She worked through it carefully, counting each stack with quiet focus, lips barely moving. When she finished, $701. She stared at the number, then looked at the bills list again, and smiled, a real one. Not Velvet's slow, smoky grin, not Marissa's tight school hall nod, just relief. She pulled open the mini safe under her bed and stacked the bills in clean bundles, separating rent, utilities, and food. No room for error. I can cover it. All of it. And still buy eggs. Maybe even cereal. She laughed, then wiped at her eyes without really knowing why. There was no champagne, no confetti, no applause, but for the first time in a long time, everything she owed was going to be paid. That was enough. Chapter 30. Bread, milk, and a little bit of power. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of the neighbor's TV through the wall. Marissa stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, scanning the mostly empty cabinets. There was half a jar of peanut butter, a sleeve of saltines, 1 egg, and a bag of rice so old it had a tear in the side and smelled faintly of cardboard. That won't do. She padded back to her room, slipped the grocery cash into her hoodie pocket, $80, give or take, and grabbed her keys. Her dad's door was closed, but she could hear him snoring faintly through it, still sleeping, still hungover probably. She paused for a second, hand on the doorknob, and looked back at the silence behind her. No note, no conversation. Not today. The corner market was only a few blocks away, walking distance. She liked it better that way. No buses, no small talk, no classmates with judgment in their eyes. Just the street, her steps, her own breath in her ears. When she stepped through the sliding doors, the cool air hit her like a splash of clarity. She didn't buy much. Milk, a dozen eggs, bread, cereal, cheap ground beef, a frozen pizza for tonight, apples, a few ramen packs, coffee, instant, but better than none, tampons, because of course she was due this week. She stood in front of the snack aisle for a while, debating a box of cookies. It felt unnecessary, indulgent. But Velvet would have said yes, and so did Marissa. She added them to the basket without flinching. The total came to $63.78, still enough left over for lunch at school next week. She carried the bags home herself, one in each hand, arms burning by the time she reached the apartment steps. The door creaked as she slipped inside. Her dad was still out. She moved quietly, putting everything away like she was stocking a bunker. Milk, bread, fruit. Even the freezer looked respectable now. I did that. She stood for a second in the middle of the kitchen, catching her breath. There was food, there was power. And for the moment there was peace. The groceries were put away. The apartment was still quiet. Just the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of the building settling into evening. Marissa didn't sit down to relax. She pulled her backpack onto the kitchen table, unzipped it, and started stacking textbooks like bricks in a wall. Chemistry, trigonometry, US history, English literature. Each one a reminder of the things she'd let slide, each one a chance to reclaim a little ground. She started with the easiest, an overdue worksheet from her government class. It took 20 minutes. Not because it was hard, but because she cared again. She erased and rewrote, double-checked a few answers. Then came chemistry. A nightmare the past 2 weeks. 2 missed labs and a quiz she never made up. She emailed the teacher, then wrote out the missing answers. Scanned pages of dense instructions and formulas that didn't make sense until she read them again and again, and then they did. She paused only once. Around 7, microwaved half the frozen pizza, split it with herself across 2 paper plates, then sat cross-legged on the couch and ate in silence, her chemistry book balanced against one knee. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't dramatic, but it was progress. By 9:30, her hand ached from writing. The table was littered with papers and scribbled notes, a few empty coffee cups, and the glow of her laptop screen. She leaned back and stretched, letting her chair creak beneath her. Done. Everything late was caught up. Everything current was ready. She double-checked her calendar. Finals in 3 weeks, summer on the horizon, and she wouldn't be behind again. Not if she could help it. Marissa packed her bags slowly, neatly. She took one last look at the fridge. Still full. Rent, paid. Power, covered. School, back on track. She switched off the light, stepped into her room, and shut the door gently behind her. Tomorrow was Monday, and she'd be ready. Chapter 31. Morning silence, then words. The morning light came in colder than usual. The air in the apartment always felt thinner on Mondays, like it hadn't decided whether the week would be kind or cruel. Marissa was already dressed. T-shirt, jeans, hoodie over both. Hair pulled back and damp from a quick shower. Her backpack sat by the door, zipped and ready. She stood in the kitchen quietly, sipping instant coffee and nibbling on a slice of toast with cheap strawberry jam. The fridge hummed behind her, full for once. The floor creaked behind her. She didn't turn around until she heard the low, scratchy voice. "There's food." She turned her head slightly. Her dad stood in the kitchen doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes, hair a mess, wearing the same T-shirt from yesterday. He looked at the table, the counter, the stocked fridge. "You go shopping or something?" Marissa didn't answer right away, just sipped her coffee. "Yeah, yesterday." He scratched his cheek, looked toward the cupboard like he didn't know what might be in it now. "Didn't think there was money for that." She shrugged, not looking at him directly. "There was?" "Well," he mumbled, reaching into the cupboard and pulling out a box of cereal. "That's good." He poured without milk, ate a handful dry like it was a peace offering. Marissa moved toward the door. She had 10 minutes before she needed to leave to catch the early bus. As her hand hit the doorknob, his voice came again, quieter this time. "Thanks." She paused, didn't turn around, just nodded. "I'll be home late." "Work?" She hesitated. "Yeah." And then she stepped out, shutting the door behind her before he could say more. The bus was already half full when Marissa climbed aboard, but she didn't drift to the very back like she normally did. Instead, she took a seat in the middle by the window and tucked her backpack between her feet. Outside, the morning sun pushed through thinning clouds, painting the tops of buildings gold as they passed. Something about the day felt different. Not perfect, not safe, but lighter. At school, the halls buzzed with the usual swirl of noise, shoes squeaking against tile, locker doors slamming, the rise and fall of conversation like ocean waves in a storm. She moved through it with practiced quiet, but her steps were less tense. She didn't flinch when someone brushed her shoulder, didn't duck her head quite as low, even nodded at someone from history class who greeted her with a casual, "Hey, Ma." No one suspects a thing, she thought, and that wasn't fear this time, it was control. In chemistry, she handed in 2 late labs and a makeup quiz without being asked. Mr. Danvers blinked at her, then gave a slow nod. "Good work catching up." "Keep it up." "Thanks," she said softly, then took her seat without shrinking from the front row. By 3rd period, she caught herself doing something rare. Smiling. Someone made a joke near her locker and she actually laughed. A small, real laugh. It felt strange, but not bad. The kind of thing you notice when it hasn't happened in a while. At lunch, she didn't eat alone in the stairwell like usual. She found Alyssa at their usual table and slid into the seat beside her without hesitation. Alyssa looked surprised for a second. "Hey, stranger. Look who remembered I exist." "Don't get excited," Marissa said, grabbing an apple from her tray. "I'm just here for the air conditioning." Alyssa grinned. "Uh-huh." But her smile softened as she looked at her best friend. "You seem less ghostly." "Thanks. You look extra annoying today." They shared a laugh. Real, easy, familiar. The kind of moment Marissa had almost forgotten how to enjoy. By the end of the day, she didn't feel invisible anymore. Not exposed, not revealed, but seen. Just enough to remember what it was like before everything fell apart. She wasn't just keeping up now, she was starting to move forward. The last bell rang, and Marissa blended into the stream of bodies flooding the hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in with no music playing, just enough to discourage conversation. She turned the corner near the admin wing, eyes already scanning the usual exit route. That's when she saw him. Mr. Callan, the school counsellor, the man from the corner table at the club. She froze for half a second, the blood draining from her face. He was standing near the front office, holding a clipboard, chatting casually with another staff member. Then his eyes met hers. She couldn't move. Does he recognize me? Did he figure it out? Is the mask not enough? Did I do something? "Marissa!" Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Marissa Lane, hold up a second." He smiled. No sharp edge, no suspicion, just friendly. She forced her legs to move, closing the space between them like it didn't feel like walking into a spotlight. "Hey, Mr. Callan. Glad I caught you. Listen, I've been reviewing our juniors for summer programs, and I thought of you. There's this career readiness internship over at the community centre. Nothing huge, but they offer scholarships and college credit if you stick with it." He handed her a folded brochure. Marissa took it with fingers that didn't quite stop trembling. "It's mostly weekends and a few weekday sessions," he continued, "so it wouldn't interfere with finals. And you're sharp. You just need something to put on paper, you know?" She nodded automatically. "Yeah, cool, thanks." "Read it over. Talk to your dad. If you're interested, come see me by Friday, spots go fast." "Okay, I will." "Good. And hey." He smiled again, and for a second she couldn't tell if it was kind or cutting. "You're doing better in your classes, keep it up." She walked away before he could say more. Fast, but not too fast. The second she hit the door and stepped into the sunlight, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. At the bus stop, she stared at the brochure like it might explode. He didn't know. He hadn't seen her. Not really. Or if he had, he hadn't connected the dots. But he had seen Marissa, and that somehow felt just as dangerous. "Summer internship, huh?" "Yeah, we'll see." She stuffed the paper deep into her bag and looked down the street for the bus. Velvet's world wasn't leaking. Yet. But the cracks were showing. Chapter 32. A Breath of Normal. The rest of the week settled into a steady rhythm. School, homework, home, repeat. For the first time in a while, Marissa wasn't chasing deadlines or dodging questions. Her grades were stable, her fridge was full, and the threat of overdue bills wasn't breathing down her neck. For a few days, it felt like she was winning. Wednesday afternoon, she walked home with Alyssa. Their steps crunched side by side across cracked sidewalks, the conversation light and stupid, just how it used to be. "Tell me again why you don't have TikTok." "Because I don't hate myself." "Liar," Alyssa said, tossing a chip from her snack bag at Marissa's hoodie. "You'd be good at it. You're mysterious. The people love that." "Yeah, sure. Me and my algebra trauma would go viral." Alyssa laughed so hard she nearly tripped over a raised slab of concrete. Thursday after school, they went to the mall. No shopping bags, just window shopping. 2 hours of pretending life was simpler. They wandered past trendy boutiques, poked fun at weird mannequins, and sniffed every overpriced candle in the fancy home store. "Velvet Rose?" Marissa read off a label. "Sounds like a bad stage name." Alyssa gave her a weird look. "That's oddly specific." Marissa smirked but didn't answer. "Let's go find food." They split an Auntie Anne's pretzel and took turns sipping from the same lemonade. For a second, it was just two teenage girls on a school night, nothing else. No clubs, no secrets, just the feeling of being 16 again, even if they weren't. Back home that night, Marissa pulled out her books again. Not because she was falling behind, because she wanted to stay ahead. She worked through Trig with music low in the background and candles flickering near her desk. Cheap ones, but they smelled like vanilla. And that was enough. By the time Friday rolled around, she felt different, grounded, calmer, like she had a grip on things again. Velvet hadn't disappeared, but for a few days. Marissa got to breathe. Chapter 33. Thursday night. Staying in. The apartment was quiet when Marissa got home Thursday afternoon, the kind of quiet that felt earned rather than empty. Her backpack hit the floor by the door with a soft thud. She kicked off her sneakers, stretched her arms overhead until her shoulders popped, and let out a long breath. No club tonight, no performance, no Velvet. Just Marissa, and a Thursday evening that belonged entirely to her. She'd texted Shayla earlier, taking tonight off, back Friday. The response had been immediate. You earned it, girl. See you tomorrow. Marissa moved through the apartment like she was rediscovering it. The fridge, still full. The lights, still on. The water bill, paid in full and taped to the side of the fridge like a quiet victory. She grabbed a soda, popped it open, and sat at the kitchen table. From her bag, she pulled out the stack of papers she'd been carrying all week, the summer internship brochure Mr. Callan had given her, a financial aid packet from the community college, and her report card, all Bs and 1 A-. She spread them across the table like a hand of cards she was still learning to play. The internship started in 2 weeks, paid, college credit, references for scholarships. I could actually do this, she thought. Not Velvet, not the girl in the mask, Marissa. She spent the rest of the evening doing absolutely nothing important. Heated up leftover Chinese food her dad had brought home, caught up on a show she'd been too tired to watch, painted her nails. Badly, but it didn't matter. Around 10, she heard her dad come home. The door opened, closed. His footsteps moved through the living room, paused at her doorway. You home tonight? She looked up. Yeah, just needed a break. He nodded slowly like he understood more than he was saying. All right. Well, there's food if you want it. Thanks. He lingered for another second, then gave a short nod and disappeared down the hall. It wasn't much, but it was something. Marissa changed into an oversized t-shirt and crawled into bed, pulling the blanket up to her chin. The room was dark except for the faint glow of streetlights through her window. She thought about the mask, tucked safely in her duffel, about the money hidden under the floorboard, about Velvet, the girl who danced in heels and commanded rooms full of strangers. That girl would be back tomorrow. But tonight? Tonight Marissa was just 18, tired, and finally, okay. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in months, sleep came easy. Epilogue. The Shadow Realm bar sat in the space between spaces. Not quite hidden, not quite real. Those who needed to find it always did. Those who didn't, never would. The door opened without sound. Grim stepped inside, his massive frame filling the doorway for just a moment before he moved deeper into the dim interior. The bar was nearly empty, just Silas behind the counter, wiping down glasses that never seemed to get dirty, and a hooded figure in the far corner who didn't look up. Silas didn't greet him, didn't need to. He simply set down the glass and met Grim's eyes. Status? Grim stopped at the bar, one hand resting against the worn wood. He held up 2 fingers. Silas's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. 2 weeks? A single nod. And she's stable? Another nod. Silas exhaled slowly, then reached under the bar and pulled out a leather-bound journal. He opened it to a marked page, scanning notes written in a language that flickered between alphabets. The awakening always comes during transition, he murmured, more to himself than to Grim. Between one life and the next, she thinks she's found balance. Grim's jaw tightened slightly, the closest thing to agreement he ever gave. Silas closed the journal with a soft thud. When it begins, we don't intervene. Not yet. She needs to feel it first, understand what she is before we tell her what that means. Grim tilted his head slightly. A question. Because, Silas said quietly, if we take that discovery from her, we take everything. She's survived this long by holding on to control. We can't strip that away the moment her real power wakes up. The hooded figure in the corner finally spoke, voice like wind through dead leaves. The girl with fey blood and human heart. The council will want her. The council can wait, Silas said flatly. She's not ready for them. And they're sure as hell not ready for her. Grim's hand curled into a fist, then relaxed. Protection. That was his purpose. That was all he needed to know. Silas looked at him with something close to respect. 2 weeks. Stay close. When the shift comes, she'll be vulnerable. Scared. That's when the predators circle. Grim nodded once more, then turned and disappeared back through the door, leaving only silence behind. Silas stood alone in the quiet bar, staring at the journal on the counter. 2 weeks, he whispered, and everything changes. The candles along the walls flickered once, then burned steady again.